Hello again, Phil Croshaw here from Passions, and in this episode, I welcome the legend rugby player that is Austin Heeley. And Austin's going to be talking to me today about his passion, which interestingly isn't just about sport and rugby. Enjoy. Very warm welcome to the show today. Welcome to Passions. And in this episode, my guest probably needs not really very much introduction, to be fair. But I'm very delighted to be welcoming Austin Heeley to the show. And Austin Heeley is going to be talking to me today about his passions, about his career, about his story, about how he got here, what happened, how it all took place. So a very warm welcome to Passions, Austin. Tell us who you are for those very few people who don't know who you are and what your passion is.
I should imagine that, thanks very much, firstly. I should imagine there's quite a lot of people who don't know who I am, because I suppose I was well known a number of years ago. So my name's Austin Sean Heeley, spelt the Irish way. I was born in Wallasey in 1970 something. And I went to school on the Wirral and then went on to become a professional rugby player. Started life at Birkenhead Park, went to Waterloo, then to Orrell, so very much regional and local, and then moved to Leicester Tigers in 1996, where I had a very elaborate signing-on ceremony at the Leicester Forest East service station, and then went on to play for England and the British Lions. And then retired from rugby in 2006 and went on to do a multitude of different and fun things.
So at the heart of it, would you say that, this might be a strange question, but not as really as strange as it might seem. At the heart of it, was your passion rugby or was it sport?
I'd say my passion was sports. I did lots of different sports as a kid. You know, when I was a kid, I think I was a bit like Sport Billy. He was my favorite cartoon character. Most people won't have a clue Sport Billy is. But I would come home from school with my homework, throw that on the floor, ignore it, and go outside and play football or run around or fight or whatever until dinner. My mum would literally shout out the house. We lived in a street called Shamrock Road, which was a line of terrace houses in just outside Clawton Village, and I'd hear dinner. You'd run in, have your dinner as quickly as you could, and then go back out until you got called in and told to go to bed. And that was pretty much my life from March till November. In between November and March, it was wait until it was a nice day and then go and do it, and then basically sit at the window or watch the TV. You'd come back and watch Grange Hill, which I think was on twice a week, maybe once a week. And then everything else you'd ignore. You didn't stare at a screen. You didn't do interviews through a box, through a tablet, a window. This would have been a window in my day. And you were outside as much as possible. So, yeah, my passion was definitely football first, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because being slightly more senior in years, I can relate to that. And people of a certain age don't really understand. My kids who are in their kind of, one of them's 14, the other 11, they can't imagine a life without the internet and tablets and screens. And basically, I think a lot of the time, I wonder, we played sport a lot, possibly because there was naff all else to do.
Yeah, basically, that's true. You could come home, watch one TV show, and then I suppose if you were artistic or creative, then you would paint or maybe play an instrument or something at home, play the guitar or the piano. I was certainly none of those things. I wouldn't say I haven't got a creative bone in my body. It's in my brain. I just can't bring it outside of my brain, that creativity. So yeah, get outside, run around, see your mates, rain, snow, shine, whatever. It was good times. One of my favorite memories actually wasn't sport, is it snowed for ages one year. And I must have been maybe 12. And we'd effectively built on the top road our road was like one of 4: Shamrock, Primrose, Daffodil, and one other road that went down from a top road. The top road was dead flat. The others had a hill on it. And we built in the snow, effectively, this ice rink. And we had a competition who could slide the furthest. And it was the only time you ever wore your school shoes out, because you could slide further in your school shoes than you could in your trainers. And so like, we'd literally get on there and you'd take a run up as fast as you could. And I was pretty quick. And then just get in a position that you could slide without falling over and killing yourself. And it must have snowed for a week. And this thing just got progressively longer and longer and longer. By the end of it, you just saw kids going down this road for about, 50 meters sliding. It was brilliant. So those are the sort of memories, you maybe scoring a goal or something. But yeah, some fun times.
Yeah, I remember it well, and especially in the school playground, that was the case. And can you just imagine now the health and safety issues when you think about the things we used to do at school?
It's not just health and safety. I mean, I've got 4 daughters, and when they were sort of that age, 10, 11, 12, I didn't really want them going outside. I was too scared about what could happen to them. My mum literally kicked me out the door when I was 5 years old. I wasn't allowed to cross the road. When I was 7, I could cross the road, and when I was 10, I could pretty much go to the pub. That's the sort of difference in our, in our generations, how we've changed. So yeah, I was kicked out at an early age.
It's quite staggering. You mentioned there that mainly football. I noticed you said. So how did that come about then? How did you make the switch to rugby from football? If football was
I didn't necessarily make the switch. I played both. So my weekend would be from about the age of 11, Saturday morning rugby for the school. Saturday afternoon, I'd go and play football for the district, for the Wirral or someone. And then Sunday, I'd play rugby, and Sunday afternoon, I'd go and play football for the local club team. So you'd have 4 games of sport a weekend. And I think that's where your fitness and your engine comes from. The ability just to get through that without injuries at the age of, and I probably did that from about the age of 11 till 16, I would say. Not every weekend would be 4 games, but quite a lot of them would be.
I've got to ask you this question, actually, because it's kind of semi-relevant to me in a sense. But when I look back to my school days, I mean, football was my big game, but the PE teacher at the time in the secondary school was very much a rugby guy. Now, I noticed that you're not short, but shorter as I am. And I remember playing rugby was something that I personally, I must have been a wuss, but I personally dreaded playing rugby at school because there were some guys that were a lot bigger than me. And it intrigues me, which is why I'm asking you the question. Was there never any kind of feeling of, I know you'd be quicker and you're more agile, but was never that feeling of like mountain facing you that was coming in to completely kill you?
Yeah, that's right. My entire career and life. Yeah, but that's still the same. That's still the same now. If you go and work in a small startup, or I've worked in startups and I've worked at really big businesses, and it's the same thing. If you're a startup, you're more nimble. You can maneuver around these big guys, but you're always worried about a big guy crushing you. You're always, worried that they'll get hold of you one day, and when they do, you can't escape. But actually, that's probably what I learned from rugby. You can always escape. You can always find a way out, whether that's physically, mentally, more agile, or actually more in a different sense, in a nastier sense. It's much easier to punch someone in the plums if they're above you.
That's a great quote, by the way. Thanks for that. That's a great quote for the interview. Okay, so you're obviously playing all this sport. Why did you end up going down the professional rugby route? Why did that become your career versus football? Was there a difference in your attitude towards it, or was it a talent issue? What was the driver?
I think probably talent. I was very quick. I kept getting sent off in football. I wasn't overly skillful. I could ping a long pass and do all the other things, but I was never going to play in midfield and turn. I got sent off an awful lot playing football because I didn't take the antics very well. So if somebody rolled around, I thought the next time you're going to roll, it's because you'll be rolling onto a stretcher and into the hospital. So I used to do that quite a bit. I remember stiff arming somebody. So I sort of took rugby onto the football pitch and football onto the rugby pitch, which works the other way round, but doesn't work in a footballing sense.
Well, it's interesting that, because you're obviously a bit of a, I'm reading between the lines a bit, but you're obviously a bit of a tough nut. Where do you think that came from? Do you think that was just in your DNA that you were a tough nut? Or was there something happened, or an attitude that, or an uncle that used to beat you senseless? What was what toughened you up?
We're gonna child services into some of my old uncles. No, I think what toughened me up was I had an asthma attack when I was 8 in Romania. I've had asthma all my life, and I then like literally nearly died. And then I had 2 weeks of cortisone injections. So I had 2 weeks of steroids at the age of 8, which and this is the only way I can sort of attribute my strength, really, because then if I go in the gym, I could lift much heavier weights than I should have been able to for weight to power ratio. So that's the only thing I can think back on that really gave me that sort of strength, both mentally and physically. So no, hard nut. No, I'm not saying I've always had a massive chip on my shoulder when I was playing, whether that's being a Scouser or an Everton fan or wherever it comes from, or probably from my mum and my dad. That you're always a bit of a Jack Russell that will bite anything and see what happens.
A few years ago, I interviewed Sam Allardyce, the football manager, and he was
Sam's a nice guy.
He's a great guy, yeah. And he was talking to me about the number of people, or the number of lads that never get through in the game, not because of lack of talent, but because of a lack of mental toughness. Is that something you can relate to in your career or in rugby?
Yeah, I was never scared to give something a go. Nothing fazed me. You know, if someone said in a meeting, "Oh, who could do this?" I would just put my hand up and say, "I'll do it." And then, in the knowledge that in your brain, thinking, "Can I actually do that?" Well, we'll find out, won't we? It's almost like a weird thing. Like the crossbar challenge is a good example. I walked up in Soccer AM and went, "Austin Healey, magician. I'll hit the crossbar," and I hit the crossbar. And then I walked up again. I said, "I tell you what, I'll have another go. I'll hit the crossbar." And I don't think that is a talent thing. I don't think it's a skill. I just think it's a mindset that you tell yourself you're going to do it. And if you tell yourself you're going to do it, you end up doing it. It becomes, a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. But and that's happened on quite a few occasions. You'll do something, someone will, like, even if it's throwing a piece of paper into a bin, at no stage do I ever doubt I'm going to throw the paper into the bin. I'll turn around and pick up a piece of paper and I'll just go, and I'll know it's gone in. And that, I don't think, is a skill thing. It's a brain thing.
So, and then at that point, your chip gets even bigger on your shoulder, does it?
I don't know if it gets bigger. I don't know if it's a chip at that point. Then it becomes arrogance, or it becomes confidence, or it becomes knowledge. I don't know what it becomes, but and even when you know you're going to fail. So sometimes you do something and you know you're going to fail, but at least you know you're not going to do it. So I think it's does the chip get bigger? No, I don't think so, because I very rarely have that thought about failure.
I mean, that's an interesting point, I think, that, because lots of people play sport at school. Lots of people play sport when they leave school. Lots of people played all sorts of different sports at different levels. But in the greater scheme of things, relatively few break through to the point where they're playing, say, for example, for their country. How much of that then, if you reflect, how much of that you've just talked about has been key to getting to the absolute top in your sport?
I would say you obviously got to have physical attributes. You've got to have strength, speed, resilience. But none of those things really matter if you haven't got the ability and the mindset to block stuff out, accept where you are, and believe you can do. If you rock up as Jonah Lomu, like Jonah Lomu was undoubtedly the best rugby player of all time, right? No one can dispute that, and I don't. And if you do, then you're an idiot. Did he have any self-doubt? Probably, but that self-doubt sort of drove on his confidence a bit, if that makes sense. So sometimes you use the doubt post to build the confidence for the next. So after a game, I would go to bed and literally I'd remember all aspects of the game that were bad for me or could have been slightly better, and then build on those. I tell a story about my first senior game for Waterloo. I played a proper game. I cried for about 10 minutes after the game, and I couldn't work out why. And it was because it wasn't the norm for me. I hadn't concentrated for 80 minutes fully prior to that. And then it just became the norm. And then you think back and how can I improve again, and it just keeps building. But part of that is the mindset. Yes, I can do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely key. And excuse me, I think a lot of kids nowadays, there seems to be some serious confidence issues. I don't know if you do stuff in schools, but seems to be a lot of confidence issues nowadays more than ever. It might be my perception, but
no, I think you're right. There's constant questioning because they're always being judged. I've seen this new social media site where you put yourself forward and you ask people for their opinions on you. What's the point of that? I couldn't give a fuck what people think about me. Never have, never will. Hence me swearing for you in front of your thing. I generally could not give a monkeys what people think.
Yeah, you're all right. You're all right. We're not Ofcom regulated. We can say what we like.
I mean, it doesn't matter. And I see what the youth of today is having to go to and how everybody is being judged. And they're being judged from a position where they think that the Kardashians are the real level of life, and that's what you should attain to. Or there's other families like them on social media and other influencers that aren't real. It's not what real life's about. It's not about being judged. It's about judging yourself. And I have real issues with it. The sooner social media gets closed down, the better for humanity.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to argue that, and it's of concern, particularly when you've got kids. I think they want to be on the gadgets all the time. They want to be on the.
They want fame. It's too easy to get famous by getting 30,000 people watching you. But do any of those 30,000, people say, I've got 1 million followers. Do any of them pay your mortgage? No, they don't. So who gives a stuff about them? Fuck them off.
Yeah, no, I do absolutely agree with you. It's quite concerning, actually. And it's all about likes, and it's all about, so I think if I go on that site you just mentioned, everybody will just be saying you're a bald git. And you know what? I don't give a monkey's either. Yeah,
well, listen, I mean, I get abuse. I'm on it for a variety of reasons, but I get abuse pretty much every day on it. So this is an example. I get up early, about 6:30, and I go and sit on the toilet and do what men do first thing when they wake up, which is obviously have a poo before you say anything. But I spend most of my time. But I spend most of my time looking at the abuse and then responding to it in a sarcastic way. So there was a guy the other day called Christopher Bell. So I then went into Twitter and changed his surname into Christopher Bellend. And I just find stuff like that amusing. But I sort of think if I'd have been not me and been one of my other teammates that wasn't so, I don't think thick-skinned is the right phrase, but those comments would severely affect you. Things like death threats, things like hope your family get cancer, all that sort of stuff. But you read it. I read it in pity more than in fear. I pity these people that they think that that's how they're going to lead their lives. Because if that's what they think, they're not going to end up in a big house in a nice cars with a lovely family having wonderful holidays. They're going to end up in a dark room with the curtains closed with a load of cameras behind them.
Yeah. It's true. It's absolutely true. I did actually have a question from somebody when I said I was going to be interviewing you, and from Tim Fussell, and Tim's works for a company or owns a company called Fussell Fine Foods, and he said that you started as number 9. What was your favourite position, and where did you give most value in the back line?
Fussell Fine Foods. That's easy to say, isn't it? When you're drunk,
it is. Great guy, actually. Yeah.
I started at scrum-half, and then I pretty much moved around everywhere. I played most of my international rugby on the wing. So I think 41 of the caps were on the wing, something like that. Might be less, might be slightly more. And then I think the utility thing comes from, like I said before, not a skill set, although that probably helped a bit, but a mindset that if Clive Woodward said to me 30 minutes before we played South Africa, Johnny Wilkinson's got a cough and is not playing, will you play fly half? I'll be like, yeah, fine, great. It's exciting. When he told me that, I didn't go, oh my God, I've got to play fly half. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. What happens if that? I just thought, oh wow, that sounds fun. Yeah, and got on with it. A week before we're playing. Did we play France in the Six Nations? He said, "You've never played fullback before, have you?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want to play fullback this week?" I said, "Yeah, sounds good." And I think most players might go, "Oh, I'm a winger though, and if I don't play on my usual position, I might lose that position." And maybe actually that's what was my downfall, was for not getting more caps apart from injuries and what have you. But I just saw it as a great opportunity to move around the back line and experience new things. It was exciting.
It sounds as if you've got a natural ability to adapt, which is something before we came on air, we just briefly were talking about the business impact of COVID. And is it really key in terms of any kind of survival and progression and success that you do have the ability to adapt to the situation?
I think so. People in business call it pivoting, don't they? They say we needed to pivot out of high street into internet real estate and all these sorts of things. I just think you see what an opportunity is in front of you, and that opportunity might not be long term, it might be short term, and you just try and take it and do whatever you can to take it. I have been relatively ruthless, I would say, both in my playing career and also post. But again, that's because I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, and you're obviously not easily put off by other people's opinions, which I guess if you could bottle that and sell it, you really would be a multi-billionaire if that was important. Because that is something that I think so many people struggle with, not just kids. I think generally people struggle with it.
I always tell people I'm not listening to them, and actually I am. So I let most of the white noise and the stuff you don't need not go in. And I have a very I don't know whether I've developed this or learned this off some, very good friends, but I let people talk a lot. And then when I need to let something in, I'll open the hatch, it'll go in, and everything else will literally just wash over the top of my head, which can be good sometimes, but can also be deemed as being very, very rude at others. And again, I don't care.
Well, maybe as a northerner, and then obviously, as you know, I'm a fellow northerner. Maybe as a northerner, people will judge you anyway and think you're rude anyway. So
yeah, I mean, I think the time when it is rude is when my kids or my wife are talking to me, and I'm thinking about something else that's gone on in the day, and they're talking, and I'm nodding, and they all know. They're like, "You're not listening, are you?" And they'll say something like, "You're a dickhead, Dad," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, yeah." And then I'll hear it sort of 30 seconds later and go, "You just called me, didn't you?" So, but I think you've got I've always thought that your brain is a bit of a server, and you've got a certain amount of megabytes in there that you can use up. So don't waste them on stuff that doesn't need to be in there. And that becomes more evident the older you get. I think it's very difficult to take stuff out and replace it.
So here's a question then, completely left field. At school, kids are taught basically a lot of the time to remember things. And a lot of the things that they have to remember and retain are available on Google in 2 seconds of a search, like when was the Battle of Hastings? So based on what you just said there, does it make more sense to change the education system to actually be not as relevant to just remembering facts?
Well, I think you're asking someone who's unqualified to answer that.
Told you it was left field.
Yeah, my opinion on education is, yes, it does need to change. I mean, this is what happened to me in school. So I could pretty much do whatever they threw at me in school. It wasn't hard. It was a bit too easy, to be honest. So for that reason, I didn't take in certain things that I didn't think I'd ever need again. I didn't bother with it. Do I give a stuff for what Hercules did in classics? No, I couldn't give a monkeys. So I didn't pay attention. I spent most of my time either counting or doing something else. Mental arithmetic, spent a load of time concentrating on. Thinking about physics, spent a fair amount of statistics, really liked it, got engaged. When you're engaged as a student, then you do really well. If you might be one of those people that is just very good at memorizing things. And if you are, then, other people are creating fact for you rather than you creating fact for other people.
I often look back and in amusement, the fact that the dummies class at my school did statistics and the clever kids did trigonometry. And I have used statistics in my career and in my business life so much. And I found that a lot more useful than anything I would have.
They were called 3.0, 4.0 and 5.0. They were the dummy class in our school. And strangely, most of those guys have gone on to be very, very successful individuals, because half of them were dummies and half of them are really clever. And they realized that school was a complete and utter waste of time.
Yeah,
for them, not for everyone, but for them. They're all entrepreneurs. They've all had businesses. They're all got boats and all that sort of stuff or whatever, fast cars. But when they were 13 and 14 and 15, and the teacher would tell them you're never going to make anything from your life, what the teacher was actually doing was giving them fire to be very, very successful.
So was that the motivation, do you think? Do you think there's a lot of motivation that people get from being told that they can't do it, they'll never do it, they'll never make anything of their lives? Is that a motivational factor to go back and say, stuff you see, I did it?
Yeah. I've often lied about this before. And people say, are you motivated to, stick two fingers up at people? And I've gone, no, I'm motivated to be the best person I want to be. Really, I want to rub people's noses in it. I want to be super rich so I can go back to those guys that wouldn't invest in my businesses on day one when they would have made huge amounts of money and go, here's a check. It's not signed because you didn't sign the paper that I wanted you to sign. And yeah, I know it says 100 million quid, but you're not getting that now. But that's what you would have got. And to be fair, it's only 100 times what you were going to put in. But thanks anyway.
Sounds like one of those people on Dragon's Den who come back 2 years later in their Rolls Royce and say, you see, you idiots, why didn't you recognize the opportunity?
Yeah, but often people who have done it have also done it themselves. So they don't really mind having it done to them. A good friend of mine said to me, some of the best deals are the ones that you don't end up doing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. So obviously you've got this passion for sport, you've got this passion for rugby, clearly. Lot more now in your life is around business as well. So do you have the same levels of passion for business now that you had for sport?
I didn't really. Strange, the passion bit, and I was thinking about this obviously prior to coming on. I was just really good at rugby. I wouldn't say I was passionate about it. There's some of my old rugby teammates would play, they'd go to the bar and they'd talk about it, and they'd go home and they'd talk about it to their wives and their kids, and then they'd talk about it to their parents, and then they'd come back to training the next day, and then they'd talk about it to all their teammates about who they talked to about it. And then it was just constant. And I was just really good at rugby. And then I went home and spoke about football or dancing or throwing the javelin. I wouldn't say I was overly passionate about it. And then I went into being a commentator. And again, I'm just really good at being a commentator. I've taken passion completely out of it. The only thing I'm passionate about is my family. And I think that's why it was quite easy for me to retire from rugby in a roundabout way. It was tough in the first 6 months or so and 9 months, until your realization is that it was just a part of your life. It's not your whole life or who you are. It doesn't define you. Whereas your family really does define who you are, your kids, your parents, your wife, and how you can force that passion into it. And what does that passion, how does it manifest itself? And I think it manifests itself with what your aspirations are to protect that passion. So, if you love something so much, you're so passionate about it, you'll do whatever it takes to make it the best it can be, but also to ring fence it from being harmed. So, that's why if people on the outside would say that I'm really passionate about business, I'm not. It's just a byproduct to help my main passion, to make sure that, and whatever the drivers are within that and where they came from. One for me is, I want that financial security to be not just this generation, but the next generation and the 2 or 3 after that. Because I remember back being in that council house in Birkenhead, my dad being a self-employed tiler, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and spewing up with nerves because he didn't know where the next paycheck was coming from. And I think you remember stuff like that and you think, right, I don't want any of my family ever to go through that. I want them to be successful and driven, but I don't want them to be driven because of there's fear. I want them to be driven because there's passion. And that's quite a big driving force for me.
I think that's fascinating. And this whole passions journey started really as a exploration and investigation into passion and people's passions and what drives them and everything else. And one of the takeaways I've got from this process is just the very wide nature of passions. It's not always about money and it's not always about career. When you ask the question, the very fact that somebody's coming onto a show like this, you actually ask yourself the question, as you just said then, what actually am I passionate about? And I think that, passionate about family and your family, I think is a wonderful passion to have.
Yeah, there can be distraction in that. There can be, you start off with an intention of, I want to, like I said, generationally make sure that fiscally they're in a good place. And then that starts to go well. And then that sometimes you lose control of it, spirals out of control in your head. And you just think, right, now I want to be super rich. And that becomes, and then you lose sight of actually what you did it for in the first place, which is what you're trying to do is actually buy time for everyone. So you're trying to give them experiences, which it's helpful for. You're trying to give them opportunity, which it's helpful for, and security. But you don't want to lose all of those 3 things by just making more and more and more and more. It loses sight of what you started at. So yeah, there's been some balancing effects through the whole process, but we're nearly there.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense to me. Okay, so were you always passionate about dancing then, Austin?
No, I've never danced before in my life, although there's the glitter ball. So no, that again was another example of just testing yourself. Do you want to do this? Yeah, I think I could probably do that. Dancing is basically the ability to count to 8 and know where your feet and your hands are in each one of those 8s for 90 seconds. And if you can do that, then you can do pretty well in Strictly Come Dancing. So all mathematicians out there now going, yeah, I can dance now. Well, we'll see.
And I guess it took you to a whole new level of, I don't know if notoriety is the right word, but there must have been a much wider, bigger audience suddenly knew about you that may have not known about you before. Yeah,
I think so. I think taking my top off probably helped for those different demographics that hadn't seen me shirtless before. In those days, not now. Now only Weight Watchers would be interested in me. So
me too.
Yeah, you're trying to explain to people the levels of stress, and I've never really dealt, I've not really had stress as such. I probably have, but I don't take it in or let it block me. But that's as far out of your comfort zone you can possibly go, and it's a big achievement being able to do it without caving in. You get 4 days to learn a new dance that you've never seen before or never experienced or watched in front of 12 million people watching at home, most of your old teammates who are hoping and praying that you really do mess it up and fall over on your face. And that, whilst a man with a camera runs around in front of you about 2 feet away and you're trying not to lose concentration. It's a real test of delivery, I think.
And are you natural? Probably maybe a daft question, but are you naturally competitive? Do you hate to lose?
Yeah, I'd say so, a little bit.
I guess there's an argument that says you can't get to where you've got to, and you can't get to the top, whatever the top means, unless you have got an element of competitive nature in you, especially in sport.
I think so. I found actually in lockdown, I feel like, I don't know if anyone else is the same, probably. I feel like I've wasted a year of my life because I went in with good intentions and thinking, right, I'm going to learn to do this and learn to do that and do the other. But in actual fact, I just ended up doing exactly the same as I'd been doing before. So it was a mythical ambition. But yeah, I think that competitiveness to try and keep driving, and you've got the same 24 hours in any one day as anyone else. You've got to maximize them. I wasted a lot of time in lockdown, like a serious amount of time, like months, just wasted doing nothing. And that's probably my overriding feeling of lockdown. Have I missed a year of my life, or have I wasted a year of my life? And I think it's probably the latter. Although when I look back retrospectively, there's been some really big milestone achievements, big interesting people that I've met. But yeah, it's a weird sensation.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And we're obviously recording this in April 2021, so we've got the light at the end of the tunnel, I hope, for God's sake. But one of the things that there's a lot of talk about now, and I don't know what your views on it are, is what will the new normal look like? It's cliche, I know, but what will it look like? Will people get back in cars and drive long distances for 1 hour meetings, or will they just use Zoom? I mean, I used to talk about Zoom to people in the past in when I was doing video interviews, and they used to think I was talking about an ice lolly. And now all of a sudden, of course, everybody's talking about Zoom as if it's just as if it's a loaf of bread. Everybody's used to it. Do you think that people will ping back a bit like elastic band and go back to how they were? I mean, environment, massive, and you talk about, I know you do a fair bit with conservation and stuff as well. Do you think things will really change, or what?
I'm a bit right-wing COVID, to be honest. I'm a bit, I've not really been massively affected by it. I don't know anyone that's died from it, which I must be in, a very small minority in the UK that's been affected by. But the bit that I don't like about it is how the perception of a COVID death is more sad than the perception of a cancer death. And I really struggle with that. People die every day, and unfortunately, this is guaranteed as death and taxes, as they say. But I think that we've sacrificed an awful lot, particularly for our young, that I can't quite put statistics next to. And being a reasonable mathematician, that's the bit I've struggled with the most. So from that point of view, going back to the new norm, what are we going to take out of it that's good? I think an acceleration and an understanding that there's a lot of wastage in the world. There was a huge amount of wastage before, whether that was food, whether it was time, whether it was how we're wasting the environment. And I think people will be more considerate of the little things that previously you just did. If you're going out each week and you're having 10, 20 coffees in one of the coffee chains, you're effectively wasting an absolute boatload of cash that you can probably spend on a holiday or, a car. Even if it's 20 coffees a week, you wouldn't be that far off. So that wastage, I think, will go. The environment will definitely be helped off the back of it. Might be a little bit too late for that in our lifetimes, but let's see. But no, I'm probably a little bit too right wing for me to give my full perception of COVID on this channel.
Well, everybody's got an opinion, that's for sure. There's no doubt. There's no about. In fact, actually, divisive seems to be a new word that's in everything at the moment. With the flames being fanned very eloquently by the media, of course.
Yeah, I mean, society has changed. Society has been polarized in every aspect of our life. I was just ahead of my time. I was very polarizing back in the late 90s. And I was social distancing from the day I started playing rugby, apparently, according to my old mates. So, yeah, it's you get told that the bit that I'm struggling with, and I've just had to take somebody to court off social media for saying something about me, which it's just unacceptable. Is they're telling you what your opinion is without asking you your opinion, and the fact that you haven't given your opinion means that you're complicit in the thing that they say that you were supposed to be doing. So that's the bit I'm struggling with. This what's it called? The cancel culture, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And why can't people just live their lives however they want to live them? As long as it's not a disrespect to other people, as long as you let other people live their lives the way they want to live theirs, get on with it. Why does everyone have to be so vocal? Why does everyone have to give opinion all the time? It's my opinion. If I'm for you, I don't have to tell you that I'm for you. If I'm against you, I don't have to tell you that I'm against you. But this is the bit, the polarization, as you said, of opinion and the driving of opinion has gone way too far.
It feels as if it's almost like become normal part of society. You know, we had Brexit, then we had, you know, the election and Boris and the election. And then you have, even with something like, are you on bloody Team Meghan or Team Piers Morgan? Then, you know, and then there's... Can you
be on neither of those teams?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can you anymore?
Well, that's one school playground where I don't want to get picked by either side. So I'm gonna go off and play my guitar in the corner if that's the case.
I think the worrying thing is, generally speaking, I think that the really worrying thing is that a lot of this stuff and the trolling and everything is entertainment. It's become entertainment for the person that's doing it and for the people sometimes that are even watching it. So I was like, you know, get the popcorn out and watch these two having a go at each other on the, it's like, you know, the old days of the Roman gladiators, just in, in a less physical
I think
way.
it's escapism from reality, isn't it?
Exactly.
And what we really need, there's a book called Homo Deus, which I think everybody should read. And it's by Yuval Harari, who wrote Sapiens. And he talks about the fact that we actually need a war. What we need now is some kind of world war where people actually realize what matters and what doesn't matter. And what doesn't matter is how big someone's bum or boobs are, or on social media, or what gold watch some man's wearing on social media. It means absolutely nothing to your life. But somehow marketeers, tech companies have enabled it to get into our brains and enabled it to become an addiction that people can't live without. So how do we get rid of it?
I don't think there's any way back, in all honesty. And in terms of, you know, if a global pandemic, which I think part of the problem I often think is that people look at the global pandemic like it was a movie. It is a movie. You know, there'll be a hero, will come out the other end and everybody will be fine. And, you know, it's not a movie. It's real life and death. It's real happening to real people. And you know, and I think that if you look throughout history, and I'm not a history buff, but if you look throughout history, numerous societies like Rome and Pompeii and all that have all fallen at some point as a result almost of getting too comfortable and to up themselves, in a sense.
Yeah, I think, you know, you asked me a question before about passion and family. What I think I'm driving for, and I think everybody should do, is just satisfaction. It's very difficult to just be satisfied now. You know, walk out of your office satisfied, go home, see them, be satisfied, sit down, watch the TV, be satisfied, have your dinner. Oh, I don't want another plate of chips. Just be satisfied with what I've got. It's almost, satisfaction is a luxury that nobody can have anymore.
And I guess that's the war point, isn't it? Where there's a war, then all of a sudden, you know, as my dad used to say, I didn't see a banana till I was 12. You know, it was those kind of scenarios where a banana was a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody wants more. Everybody wants the Bugatti footballer lifestyle, but there's too many of us for that to happen.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think we're going to fix it this morning, Austin, unfortunately. But
when I'm Prime Minister, that's what I will do.
Right, and I'll have this interview with you, so I'll be well rich because I'll just be selling it to the highest bidder, so I'll be fine. So please go ahead with that. It'll be fine by me. Okay. Mate, thanks ever so much for your time. I'm going to end it there because I know we could talk for a lot longer. I'm conscious of your time. Thanks for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure and really interesting, actually. And yeah, this is the first time out of all the passions interviews we're doing and we've done that somebody has said that their core real passion is their family, which is a nice one. It's another box ticked in terms of that long list of passions.
Yeah, so, I think it has to be. You know, if it's outside of that, then you lose track of who you are. And I see a lot of my teammates who really struggled when they finished playing rugby because it was their passion. and then how do you find another one? But one thing never leaves you in your life, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, and that's your family. Everything else drops in and drops out, comes and goes, changes, manifests itself in different ways, annoys you, upsets you, enlightens you. But one thing that never leaves you is your family.
Yeah, and it's true. And I went, I took a year out about 20 years ago now, actually. Went around the world for a year. And I took my family very much for granted. And I know I did. And I was very lucky. I had loving parents and very caring parents and all the rest of it. And it was only when I went traveling and I was out, I was out in Australia on the other side of the world, and really just went through a point in time where I just felt a bit fed up. And that was another learning point. You can be anywhere, most beautiful place in the world, but if you're feeling pissed off, you're feeling pissed off. But that was what changed for me. And when I came back, I appreciated them so much more because I'd been without them, and it gave me a feel for what it might be like if they weren't around.
It'll still be a pain in the arse, though. Try having 4 daughters, then you'll understand it.
Oh, blimey. On that, yeah, I've got a son and a daughter, and that'll do fine, thanks for me. 4 daughters. That must be fun in your house.
I got 4 teenage daughters. One's in Costa Rica at the minute, and the other 3 are home. But they're all back to school next week, which is rejoicing.
And how have they coped with COVID then? Have they kind of taken it in the stride, or have they?
I don't think we'll see. I don't think we'll know for a while the long-term effect on a lot of the kids. That's what I said. I don't want to get too much into my right-wing thoughts on COVID, but I see what we're doing now. I got involved in some of the COVID economies that were kicked off, and actually how disgusting that all became. People making huge amounts of money off other people's misery. I really struggled with that. How them actually, variety of different businesses starve supply to the NHS. The NHS had to play through the nose for things that were going to save doctors' lives. How certain people of position abused it. That's probably another story for a different channel. And I just, again, it's just a sad indictment on society that I think ultimately all of the problems in society come down to the fact that there's too many people on the planet. And that is the main problem for everything.
Yeah. And of course, then the question is, are natural disasters of this type nature's way of trying to do a clear out? But are we now in a position where science has got to the point where it can push back the clear out process, in which case then there isn't the big wipe out of people, and we don't reduce the numbers on the planet, and off we go again? I think
we've opened the box.
We've opened the box, which is why I better close it now before you say something really iffy. No, really, seriously, mate, really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. And
no, thank you.
Hopefully, maybe I'll meet you with Spencer for a drink sometime when we can actually get out in the real world again.
Yeah, no problem. All right, mate. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers, Austin. Bye-bye, mate. Bye-bye.